Hey, how's it going? Myles here at Tactical Hyve. I'm joined by Coch. We wanted to clear up some confusion regarding some comments we read about tactics versus technique versus principles. So if you're interested, stay tuned. Welcome back. So as I mentioned in the intro, we've run into some comments about people. Yeah, they don't truly understand.
There's some confusion. I'll show a technique and they're like, well, wouldn't you be jumping and hiding behind something and going seeking cover? Well, that's different. Okay, so the technique, it's like in martial arts. Your technique, you learn how to kick, right? You kick it back, but that ain't fighting. Okay. The fight is more the tactic, where tactics come in. Football, learning how to throw a football, that's your technique. Learning the plays, and everybody working together, that's the tactic.
Equates to tactics. Like I like to put it that the technique is pretty self-explanatory. It's one of those isolated things that you're learning, whether it's shooting or any activity. And don't mark my words, this is probably not the Webster Dictionary meaning, I don't know, but this is just how I like to define it. The tactic is kind of how you apply it, put it together, the strategy, just like Coach talked about in football, it's like the play, the actual play, where you're now using the techniques that you've learned.
Yep. And when it comes into shooting, it's a martial art, okay? And for the last 15 years, I've been teaching the very basics as my day job. So, we start with, hey, if you want at the end of the certain amount of time we have to train, you want a certain result, you have to, reverse engineer everything. So you start off with, hey, stand like this. Like, I remember a couple years, I had you and your brother out there.
Yeah.
Stand like that.
Basics, yep.
You learn it first, get the reps in, and then you start testing those, okay, and under stress. Because shooting's always going to be done under stress. Fighting is done under stress. So you can't just go straight to, get in a gunfight. That's not good. But time stress, performance stress, you race each other, little things like that. But you have to use those. That is not a tactic either. That's, you're adding to your technique. But when you use the technique under stress, you learn whether you own it or not. So let's say there's a fairly complex technique and we test you under stress and you screw up a couple little pieces of that. Well, what do you do to fix that?
So you're going to have to practice. You're going to have to put in the time, put in the repetitions, and get better. So, and just like anything that the reason why we also create all these videos is our hope is that you guys are getting the knowledge and then putting in the reps. So that's something we want to just clarify. One, because we see a lot of comments out there just not really fully understanding the difference between tactics and techniques, but also here at Tactical Hyve, we understand that we don't really know who's watching these videos, right? So I know we've had some people comment going, we can't believe you're showing this, can't believe this or that. And one thing we're really cautious about is putting out information out there that can get into the wrong hands. And the reason why techniques are okay and not necessarily tactics is, once again, kind of like if you learn how to punch and kick, those are techniques, but it does not mean you can fight. You might have you have a better chance than someone who doesn't know how to punch and kick, but you may not be able to put anything together.
We're not publishing the playbook, okay? Back to your football analogy, everybody knows how to throw and run and kick and everything that you do, but that coach's playbook, that's his tactics. So we're not handing any of that out. But the techniques, it's pretty standard. And the way we teach it is not the only way. Okay, let's just, put it into that, all right? I'll never tell you in one of my classes that you're doing it wrong. If you've shown up and you're doing something and it's working for you, it's not wrong. Now, I may have a way to make you a little faster or maybe clean up that technique, and I'll tell you, but it's going to be up to you at that point to put in the time to switch from the technique that you're using to this other one that may shave a little time off, okay? But understand, you got to put the reps in. It's going to cost you in time and maybe ammunition, and dry fire time for sure, in order to switch over from the way you were doing it to the way that I'm going to teach you, but I'm not going to teach you 10 different ways, 10 different techniques to do the same thing, because you're not going to learn any of them at that point, okay? I'm going to pick the best one that I think works for, my situation and my students, and that's what I'm going to stick with. But if you show up with a technique that's working for you, as long as you're safe and it's working, hey, stick with it. I don't know everything. Okay, I know a bit, and I've been doing this for a while, and I'm fairly good at translating, my information over to students. But I'll never say that my technique is the only way to do it. That's
a really good segue into techniques versus principles. Because just like Coach mentioned, there's tons of techniques out there. And so this is where the discussion between techniques and principles is very important. But before we get to that topic, we want to thank Dry Fire Mag for sponsoring today's video. If you aren't familiar with Dry Fire Mag yet, they're a great dry fire training tool, particularly for those who use striker-fired pistols. If you don't know about the Dry Fire Mag, make sure to check them out in the description below. So principles and techniques. As Coach already mentioned, lots of techniques out there, and I like to use the analogy, it's like dressing up, matter of style, where Coach is wearing a black shirt today, I'm wearing a gray shirt today, but it's accomplishing the same thing, right? Where we're covering up our...
covering my boobs.
Yeah, exactly.
Covering up man boobs.
So that is something where the technique can be different, but you accomplish the same goal. But for all techniques, there's an underlying principle that allows you to accomplish the goal. And let me give you an example here. Let's say, I don't think anyone will argue that when you're holding a pistol, you want to eliminate as much leverage that the gun will have over you by having a really high grip on that beaver tail. I don't think any instructor will, again, go against that. But the techniques, in order to do that, maybe someone, because of bony structure or whatever, maybe the arm is just a little bit different. And if you run into an instructor who goes, no, it has to be precisely that way, and saying, no, you must wear a black shirt rather than a gray shirt, that's when things, kind of fall apart.
Yeah, we run into it all the time. In the military, you can't pick your gun. You get issued a gun. Well, your hand is all different sizes, right? So in order to establish that good, solid grip that he's talking about, master grip, whatever you want to call it, if I've got small hands on that same Glock 19 or SIG 226 or whatever we're using, I'm going to have to rotate it. You're going to have to rotate that hand around a little bit to make sure that you can address the trigger properly and get that good, solid grip. So that principle is still the same, good, solid grip. How you get it, now that is going to be your the principle there, or the fundamentals that we're working with.
And this is often misunderstood. That's why, again, we're creating this video, but also this is addressing some of the comments where there's lots, and Coach knows this. I believe in the 20 questions video, Coach kind of addressed this too. There's so many ways to do things, and everyone, when they see one way or may have learned it from one instructor, they think that's the end all be all. Let's pretend that maybe you're listening to Coach, and you absolutely should. Coach has a lot of experience. And let's say though that Coach said this is the way he likes to do one thing. You might take that as being that is the only way to do the thing, and it's not really the case. There are techniques and then there are principles.
And we'll show you. We work the technique. If you can't do something because of flexibility or whatever, eye-hand coordination, left eye, right eye dominance, there's a lot of things that the individual student brings to the table. And so our job is to apply the right technique to execute the principle so that once you've learned that, you can go get with your group and work your tactics, okay? Or learn to clear your house if you're doing one-man CQB for your house or whatever that is, that's your playbook. Okay, so there's your principles, your techniques, and your tactics all together.
And the beauty about understanding principles, for those of us who have followed, is you ultimately can make your own technique. If you know the principles based on your individual hand size, different variables, then you'll be able to find what works for you.
Yeah, a lot of times I tell my students, I can get you 85% of the way there. Okay, if you do everything exactly how I tell you, that'll get you 85%. That last 15% is your adjustments for your body. Everybody's body geometry is different. Your eyesight's different. Your reflexes are different. You're going to have to kind of mold that last 15% to your individual, personality. So A lot of people, new shooters, they want to jump straight to the tactics. Everybody wants to be John Wick on day one, right? Well, no, what you need to do is work the technique that supports the principle, right? Get all that, get it solid, get your reps in, get to the range, dry fire, think about it. That's what you need to work on first. Tactics comes later, right? The technique has to support those basic principles that we start with. Don't put the cart in front of the horse.
Yeah, it's kind of like, don't focus on the tactics. For example, if you don't know how to punch and kick, then why would you go in the ring and try to fight somebody who's an expert puncher and kicker? You're just going to be in for a bad day.
Yeah, there's a lot of time in between there, right? Learn how to make a fist first, right? Then you learn how to punch, and you build up. And then you spar a little bit with a guy who actually likes you and doesn't want to rip your head off. And then once you figure you're good to go, then take it on the road, and see what you got.
So that's all we have for you today. We just thought about it. We're talking during our filming and training session, so we wanted to clarify that. So hopefully it's helpful for you. And as always, if you like the video, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. Leave us some comments below if you have any questions. And if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to hit that subscribe button because we release a video every single day and you want to be notified. Take it easy, guys.